Hello my friends and welcome, my name is Dennis and this is the latest update from Ukraine. So Ukraine ambushed one more Russian base in the Kursk region. Let's go to check it out. So yes, it's the area of the special military operation on the territory of Russia, and here you can see the road, and this is the village of Ivanovskaya. And Ivanovskaya is used by Russia to deploy the military personnel, so they have some of the barracks there. And you know, Mr. HIMARS decided to visit the place. You can see one of the Russian army trucks, which has this tactical sign that Russia uses in Kharkiv and also in the Kursk regions. So it was the supply vehicle of the Russian army. And here you can see the Russian military UAZ off-road vehicle and the main institution, the Russian military center, on the back. Yes, it's pink. As one of the eyewitnesses say, HIMARS hit exactly at the same time that Russian infantry personnel was in line in front of the building. And sorry guys, I cannot fully share this video on YouTube, but you may check it out on my Telegram channel. As it is reported by some of the Russian channels, 22 soldiers and officers were zeroed by HIMARS. Yeah, for the Russian army, a HIMARS visit is never a good ending. Well, nevertheless, Russia tries to hunt Ukrainian HIMARS systems. For example, they were deployed on this road. It happened during the nighttime and Russians spotted Ukrainian HIMARS with the help of the thermal camera on the drone. So there were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 HIMARS systems. And Russia immediately launched their Iskander ballistic missile. Yeah, sorry about this watermark, it's the place where I got this video. So rocket hit somewhere near to those HIMARS systems. Very close, you can see this distance, but not exactly the systems themselves. So maybe there were some of the damages done to the last vehicle in this convoy. There was one more kaboom quite far away from the convoy, but at the same time Russia used also the cluster munition warhead. So from this video we understand two of the things, that Russian missiles are not that precise after all, and the second thing, that Ukrainian command continued to make mistakes by putting lots of the HIMARS systems all together somewhere not far away from the front lines. They were stationary located, spotted, and Russia opened the fire. And it was the pure luck for Ukrainian side that the Russian missiles didn't hit HIMARS systems directly. But still again, there could be some of the damages done. This video was shared roughly 2 days ago. And then I see those kind of the videos, I always question, how does Russia obtains the information about Ukrainian vehicles? Just a random flight of surveillance drone? I don't think so. They knew where to fly. Not a long time ago, Russians tried to break through in the Chasiv Yar direction. They got more territories, but finally Ukraine managed to stop the Russian attacking convoy. Here's, as usual, Russian tank in the front and behind some of the armored vehicles. And you know, we have an update of how many tanks Russia has still in their storages, obviously based on the satellite images, because it's the open information and it's discovered and analyzed by the Osinit analytics. Like for example, the group of the Jumpy Himashed and Covered Cabal. So before the war, the total number of the Russian tanks in their storages was 7,342. Quite a lot. But now we're speaking about 3,517 of the tanks. So Russia lost more than half of their tanks since the beginning of the war. Again, those which were in the long-term storage warehouses. But again, analytics divided those tanks into several of the groups. For example, decent tanks, ready to go, poor condition tanks require maintenance, and the worst tanks which only could be cannibalized for the spare parts. So it means that for this hour Russia is still capable to send just 279 tanks to Ukraine, and 2001 requires significant modernization and maintenance. Also, we know that Russia is still capable to produce roughly 250 tanks per year, modern tanks like T-72B3 and T-90, but again, even with those they have issues. For example, their best serial tank T-90 has lots of the Western produced parts, small components, which they use for aiming equipment and for semiconductors, because this is technologically more advanced tank compared to old generation like T-62. And even T-72B3 is equipped almost with the same tools as T-90. And guys, I'm not making this stuff up. Here you can see the picture of the Russian tank. This is T-72, not even T-90. And here we have the Thales equipment, the French corporation which produces electronics and aiming equipment for military and the other electronic stuff for commercial needs as well. Even before this company was involved in a big scandal because they supported the Russian fighter jets flying. Some parts of the avionics were sent to the company base for repairs, and they were purchased as well for the Russian new-made fighter jets via the third countries. But this scheme, as far as I know, was stopped. Yeah, the Western sanctions are not working as they should, but we cannot say that they're not working completely, and Russia has major issues producing the enough number of the new tanks to replace their losses. And for this reason, Russia recently started to use completely different transport on the front lines, including civilian cars, which were converted into some sort of the Mad Max style vehicles. So here you can see the standard transport now for the Russian infantry, some sort of the China-made motorcycle with Ural sidecar. Yes, they move like that. And also there on the background you can see kind of the damaged car, but I bet they also use that one. But during the winter time, Russian engineers also try to come out with new ideas. For example, this is the all-terrain vehicle, I guess. Well, at least we see that it runs. How fast and how far it might go, that's the question. Also, Russia uses Bukhanka armored not the armored vehicles, but the standard vehicles to deliver lots of the infantry. So they land not from BMP or BTR, which has at least some of the armor, but here it is nothing, absolutely nothing. So if there is the FPV drone, just a single one with RPG shell, most of them are just kaputted. So for the last months or something, Russians started to use lots of those civilian vehicles, really with absolute no armor. Yes, sometimes those vehicles fast, but they cannot protect their soldiers. It doesn't look like the professional army for me, not even the second army in the world, but Russia cannot provide their forces with the armor protected vehicles. It's crazy. It's like Somali army or something. And this is the result. Then Russian soldiers use civilian cars for their advancements. Yes, if they meet FPV drones, you can see lots of their shrapnel everywhere, and the vehicle is no go. Probably together with a driver, at least driver. And yes, this video was filmed this summer probably, but I just want to show you that some of the Russian even armored vehicles have a very thin layer of that armor, for example MTLB. So to reinforce the vehicle, Russians put some of the trees and rubber. I know this moped, it is Karpaty, Ukrainian made by the way. I rode the same when I was 14 years old, but it is just useless on the front lines. I understand that Ukraine also may use some of the strange transport, but just behind the front lines. Ukraine never attacks on civilian cars. Russians start to do it. Try to guess what is happening in this video. Yeah, those are the ships, and they were delivered to the Russian army as supplies. They put those ships in one of the barns of the Russian military facility, not far away from the front lines, and they want to eat them or not. Maybe it's the special delivery for the Ahmad battalion. Guys, you probably know about the conspiracy theory around the Putin's doubles. Well, maybe it is correct. Maybe it was the Putin's double who greeted Russians with Happy New Year. Because coincidentally, I found the real Putin who congratulated Russians at the same time, but in different location.
Военнослужащим, защищающим интересы нашей Родины.
Yep. And sometimes Russians even have this kind of the transport. This is Dnieper motorcycle, but it was kaboomed by Ukraine. The sidecar design is kind of interesting though, definitely the second army in the world, But again, my friends, it's better not to underestimate our enemy. It has one major resource. Despite the problems with armored vehicles and so on, Russia has army men. And they pay those millions and millions of rubles just to sign the contract with the Russian army and put themselves in mid-waves. To conquer that Russian tactics, Ukraine absolutely needs advanced weaponry, more advanced, because causing the losses for the Russian army is not enough. The losses of the Russian army should be overwhelmingly large compared to Ukraine, like not 2-3 times more, it should be 6-7 times more. And it is only possible with the long-range weapon systems. Kursk Oblast again, Russians are looking at the engine of the ATACMS missile, which delivered some of the clusters on their territory. Well, I'm not honestly sure whether Ukraine has different modification of the ATACMS rather than cluster. But again, we have one more evidence that Ukraine continued to use Western-made like long-range weaponry on the Russian territory, and you probably wasn't nuked by Russia wherever you are. So all of that hysteria with the Third World War is coming, that was roughly 1 month ago, is now gone completely. By the way, my friends, if you want to support the job that I do on YouTube, you may also join my Patreon. The Patreon page link I'll put just in the video description below. Thank you so much for your kind support. Right guys, I promise you to tell about the destiny of 155th Brigade, and it shows definitely the incompetence of Ukrainian main generals who are commanding Ukrainian army, generals like Syrsky. And what happened to this brigade is actually a huge reputational damage to all of the Ukraine. But I'm here trying to speak truth, even though this channel is biased, it's pro-Ukrainian, but we shouldn't avoid those topics. We need to raise the awareness as all of the pro-Ukrainian volunteers, independent journalists and military commanders, some of them do. And here we have the article from Forbes, even that Ukraine's new Leopard 2 brigade began disintegrating before it reached the front line. Actually, mainly it is true. The soldiers of the brigade were sent to the France for the training, but the soldiers who were taken to this brigade, some of them were mobilized against their will, so they were demotivated from the very beginning. As you probably know, there are just forced mobilization in Ukraine where people, men, are just being taken from the streets into the small vans against their will, imprisoned, sometimes even tortured, like for example in this case. So this guy was hit by militants many of the times, and unfortunately he lost his life. It happened yesterday, and there are hundreds of those cases. It's illegal, but Ukrainian government does it because, you know, people lost the motivation, and also it's the fault of Ukrainian government that people actually lost motivation, because from the very beginning motivation was there. Well, I guess it's the topic of the separate video of why mobilization really failed in Ukraine. Now let's speak about this particular brigade, which was formed from the soldiers taken from the streets mainly. As the outcome, even before brigades start to fight on the front lines, roughly 1,700 people deserted from it. So totally there were 5,800, 1,700 deserted. As recently as November, nearly 500 soldiers were reportedly still wall. So you might think that 1,200 soldiers came back. No. And those are more or less official figures, but in reality it could be even worse. So it was the idea of Syrsky to form new brigades, and Ukraine forms new brigades by the time that existing brigades do not have enough infantry forces, do not have enough personnel and equipment. As for me, I'm again not a military guy, but even for me it sounds really strange, and the same signal we have from Ukrainian commanders of the lower rank than Syrsky, so they say that this idea is wrong. And also by the time brigade went to France for the training, roughly 50 of the soldiers asked for asylum in France, so they left brigade, they deserted again. So rolling into the battle outside Pokrovsk in the recent days, 155th Brigade, mechanized brigade, suffered heavy casualties, reportedly even losing some of its tanks and other armored vehicles. Yes, Leopard tanks were lost. And according to the journalists who went to this brigade, who spoke with the commanders of this brigade, it was madness. They hadn't enough even meshes for their tanks to protect those against the drone strikes. They didn't have enough surveillance drones, so the brigade was formed. Nearly $1 billion was spent for it, for all of the military equipment, training and so on, and you have this result. Also, brigade was dispersed along the front lines, so there was very poor communication and logistics within it. Those troops and tanks would have stood a better chance under experienced brigades, says Bogdan Kurtevich, a chief of staff of Ukrainian National Guard's Azov Brigade, and here I 100% agree with his opinion. Can it be idiocy to create new brigades and equip them with such equipment having incomplete existing ones? Kurtevich asked. So it's total nonsense, like to take people from the streets, unmotivated people, give them the best of the equipment like Leopard 2 tanks, French armored vehicles also, and send them to fight in Pokrovsk, in one of the hottest directions, after their training, and of course they will suffer heavy casualties. Well, if you want to create a new brigade, send there at least motivated people and send them to the place where they can practice, because there should be the battle coordination done at first in brigade for some time before setting it to the very hot spots. So why not to send those Leopard 2 tanks, soldiers to Azov Brigade, to 47th Brigade? Why to form a new one which just suffered heavy casualties? Like every brigade or regiment, it has its own core, and experienced military personnel, commanders, sergeants, and if you form something from the scratch, initially there will be chaos. No matter what equipment you use there, it will not bring the victory, no. So as for me, it's a very strange move from Syrsky. I already told you about his strange moves during the defense on the east, in some cases with the Kursk operation, and now with 155th Brigade. Well, it's my opinion that Syrsky is not competent to keep his position. But again, it's my opinion, you may have your different ones. I think it was a mistake to dismiss Zaluzhny at first. But you know, we have what we have, and those kind of the cases, they're very terrible at first for Ukrainian reputation, because those guys were trained in France and then they start to desert from the branch. French military say, are you really serious? Like, we're training you, you spent lots of the funds, for what? Like, they thought that the part of the guys are just not motivated. And yes, guys, here we speak truth, the things as they are. I'm not giving you the fake information. And by the way, Ukrainian prosecution already started the investigation about creating this brigade and basically putting it from the very beginning. The only thing that was done properly here, I guess, is the training in France, yes. But the lack of the equipment, drones, drone protection, and the lack of the experience and motivation of the soldiers, plus poor military command, played a very bad role for this brigade, for Ukrainian army in general, and for Ukrainian reputation, unfortunately. Yeah, who would tell you that from the pro-Ukrainian channels? But my duty is to tell you the things as they are. So you may find the information about the brigade on Forbes here, or for example, Cenzor.net with journalist Butusov, who actually wrote this topic on his YouTube channel, and on Telegram publishing this information. So Zelensky will hold a meeting of the general staff. The main topic is the investigation to 155th and a Kievskaya brigade, Butusov said. So Zelensky is now very concerned because this information went public. And my duty here is for it to be even more public, because we don't need to make those mistakes, because those are the human lives, the lives of Ukrainian soldiers, and basically it's the protection of Ukraine, the defense, which is done very poorly in this case. So I'm quite mad about 155th Brigade, and first of all the attitude of Ukrainian government and command towards the guys who serve there. Yeah, I guess many of the sources already wrote about the destiny of 155th Brigade, which is not good. Alright guys, about the frontlines updates, there are no recent update published by the Deep State military map source. I'm still waiting for it. According to the other sources, the fight is happening in Novotroitsky direction, and there Russia took some of the ground. However, Ukraine tries to counterattack, and the situation in Velika Novosilka continues to be difficult for Ukrainian defenders. There Russia already cut all of the supply lines, as you know. It means that even this month Ukraine may withdraw the forces from this town. Guys, about Transnistria and the situation there, actually for people who live in Transnistria, it is terrible. They have no gas, their industrial production almost stopped completely, and Russia connects that with Ukraine, that Ukraine cancels the transit of the Russian gas, so Russia cannot send their gas to supply Transnistria. But actually, it's not like that. There is the alternate pipeline that Russia continued to use. It goes through Bulgaria. So Moldova and Transnistria received the gas from this pipeline. It is called Balkan Stream. What happened with Transnistria that Russia just stopped supplying gas to that self-proclaimed republic, and they took local people who live there, civilians, as hostages, saying that it is all because of Ukraine. But what also Russians say that Moldova should pay roughly $700 million for the Russian gas, which was supplied to Transnistria, but Moldova has nothing to do with that. The official government of Moldova didn't take that decision to supply that gas. That is why they say that there is no legal debt on Moldova itself. But for Russia, they don't care and they now cut supplies. The goal for Russia is they want to create one more point of instability in Eastern Europe, and with their influence country, with their puppet country like Transnistria, they may try to push Moldova, because this year there will be also parliament elections in the country. So Russia wants to achieve the victory, forcing locals to vote for pro-Russian parties for them to avoid the possible future war with Russia, because locals are really scared of Russia there. As they have been scared, for example, in Georgia, where definitely many Georgians voted for the pro-Russian party, because they are afraid that Russia might attack them again, as it happened already in 2008. They see what is happening in Ukraine and they don't want their homes to be destroyed. And it was really a propaganda that worked from the Russian party. So they showed the destroyed cities of Ukraine and Tbilisi, for example. So what would you choose? Vote for the pro-Russian party, or your country will just be destroyed by Russia. And yeah, unfortunately it works. Well, actually kind of the same narratives you might hear from the Western politicians. Let Russia occupy Ukraine, because in the other case they would start the Great War, so let them have everything they want. But obviously it's complete blackmail of Russia, and unfortunately in the West there are some of the people spreading this absolute propaganda. Oh, one of the biggest Russian propagandists went to the hospital. His name is Kirill Fedorov. He used to live in some of the Baltic country. I don't remember in which one. And you know, he just hates us. He hates all of the Ukrainians and West as well. He always makes fun of the Russian strikes on civilian infrastructure. But now he's in hospital. He has something with his lungs, probably COVID, and unable to breathe without oxygen. What can I say here? I hope that even oxygen will not be a solution for his issue. I guess, but we also have some of the good news. For example, those are the Ukrainian trenches which were built roughly 1 month ago near Kursk, and those are very well done. Like for example, you have the drone protection meshes on the top, much more safer compared to the standard trench. In some places it's like the bunker with reinforced top. The wooden floor, so in case of the bad weather, all of the liquid water goes here, but the feet of the soldiers are always dry. But the bad thing, again, that those are just exceptional cases. Those should be built elsewhere. Well, we have the confirmation that Russia lost a Mi-28 helicopter with 2 of the pilots on board. So total losses for Russia for the last couple of days are 3 helicopters together with the crew. Well, I'm trying to find out more information about this one, where it was shot down. Well, maybe after all it also happened because of the Ukrainian drone boat attack. And also great news, Russia lost the Panzer 1S air defense system. Russia already lost many of those throughout this war. Well guys, I'm gonna keep you updated on situation in Ukraine and not only. For now, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are and have a great time.